Hey, welcome to our explainer. So, today we're diving into this really interesting, kind of weird trend where politicians are stepping off the podium and, well, onto the concert stage. They're not giving speeches, though. They're holding what's being called political concerts. So, is this the future of how politicians connect with us, or is it just a bad performance that's doomed from the start? Let's get into it. Okay, so this is really the central question, isn't it? Why are we seeing so many politicians acting like they want to host their own talk show? This isn't just some random thing happening. It actually points to something much, much deeper going on in society, and maybe a huge misunderstanding of what a politician's job is supposed to be.
You see, this whole trend didn't just appear out of thin air. It really grew out of a public that was feeling more and more disconnected, a society that was just hungry for a real conversation with its leaders. There was this huge communication void, and, well, something was bound to try and fill it.
And this search for a connection, it's not new at all. If you look back, satirical talk shows used to fill that role, but they eventually kind of faded out. Then, in the 2000s, we saw leaders like President Roh Moo-hyun and later President Lee Myung-bak try these direct dialogue with the people events. But for whatever reason, those formats never really stuck, leaving that communication gap wide open for this concert idea to make a big entrance. So how did this specific format, the concert, just explode in popularity? Well, here's the twist. It didn't start with a politician. Not at all. It started with a professor who completely changed the game. And what's so wild about this method is that it was nothing like a stuffy lecture or a scripted press conference. It was this cool mix of casual, totally open-ended conversation and actual entertainment, like with live music. It was all designed to feel fresh, accessible, and it was aimed squarely at a younger crowd.
And let me tell you, the impact was huge and immediate. This format didn't just get a few people interested, it shot its host to #1 in the popularity rankings, basically creating a major political figure out of a professor, almost overnight. So, of course, every other politician looked at that and thought, hey, I've got to get me some of that.
But this is where we get to the absolute core of the argument. While this concert format was genius for a professor, it is, fundamentally, the completely wrong stage for a politician. And the reason for that, well, it comes down to what they do and how they're trained. And this just lays out the mismatch perfectly. I mean, think about it. A professor's entire professional life is about open dialogue. They're in front of students every single day, taking unscripted questions, trying to explain complicated stuff. A politician, on the other hand, they live in a totally different world of strategic meetings and very carefully worded formal debates. Let's really break this down. A professor's training is that day in, day out public interaction. Their habit is free-flowing discussion. Their whole arena is the lecture hall. Now look at the politician. Their training is in backroom negotiation. Their habit is to build a position behind the scenes. Their arena is the parliament. As the source material says, a politician just isn't loaded. They're not conditioned for the spontaneous, unfiltered vibe of a talk concert. So, what happens when politicians just ignore these huge differences and try to copy the professor's playbook anyway? Well, according to our source, it's pretty much a recipe for disaster. Right, so because they just aren't trained for this kind of live, off-the-cuff environment, they almost always end up making clumsy mistakes or having slips of the tongue. But, and this is the bigger problem, the public sees right through it. They realize the real reason for the show isn't to communicate, it's just a shallow play for popularity, and people judge that harshly. And that initial excitement, it fades away fast. Okay, so if the concert stage is the wrong place for a politician, then what is the right way for them to do their job and communicate with us? The source actually lays out a super clear step-by-step process. So this is what our source argues is the real work of a politician. It's got nothing to do with being on stage. It starts with just observing and listening to what people are actually frustrated about. But, and this is the key part, their job isn't to just react to one person's story. It's to synthesize lots of different voices, turn that into a real, concrete policy, and then finally, go fight for that policy where it actually counts, in Parliament. So the bottom line is this. A politician's job isn't to be a media star who just talks about problems. Their job is to be a representative who actually rolls up their sleeves and creates solutions through the real, sometimes messy, process of government. And that really brings us to the final big takeaway here. It's the central conflict at the heart of the whole thing. What are we really asking our leaders for? Are we asking for a performance, or are we asking for politics? The source just perfectly captures the public's final verdict with this one blunt quote. After all the novelty wears off, the feeling becomes crystal clear. Hey, stop trying to be an entertainer and just do the job we elected you to do. People don't want a comedy show, they want a government that works. And that really leaves us with a tough question for today, doesn't it? In this world of social media, of constant connection, where personality is everything, where do we draw the line? Where's the boundary between real, genuine communication that serves all of us and just empty performance that only serves the performer? That is definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.